Hello everyone, this is Compass, navigating legal studies for your mission. This video is a legal essay practice for law students and bar exam takers. Today's topic is trust administration and future interests. Problem. Testator established a testamentary trust transferring property to trustee with the following terms. To pay to or apply toward the benefit of son, first, the entire net income generated by the trust annually, and second, as much of the principal as trustee deems appropriate in its sole and absolute discretion for son's education and healthcare needs. Upon son's death, the trust principal shall pass to testator's nieces and nephews. Son has been pursuing a medical degree, incurring significant expenses, and currently has $50,000 in annual tuition and associated costs. The trust generates $30,000 in annual income. Trustee has refused to distribute any portion of the principal for son's tuition and advised him to seek student loans instead. Trustee cites the need to preserve the trust corpus for son's potential future health needs and to ensure there is property remaining for the remainder man, the nieces, and nephews. Son has asked a court to compel trustee to distribute $20,000 from the trust principal to cover the shortfalls in his tuition. Question number 1. Can son compel trustee to distribute trust income to pay his tuition? 2. Can son compel trustee to distribute trust principal to pay his tuition? 3. Can the trust be terminated at son's request? Number 1. The issue is whether the trustee of a mandatory income trust refused to distribute income for the beneficiary's tuition and educational expenses. Rule. A trustee of a mandatory income trust must distribute all net income to the beneficiary as directed by the terms of the trust. The trustee has no discretion to withhold income if the trust specifies mandatory payments. Here, the trust requires trustee to pay the entire net income annually to son. This language creates a mandatory income trust, obligating trustee to distribute all income to son. Tuition expenses are clearly within the scope of the trust's purpose, that is education and support. Therefore, the trustee cannot refuse to pay the full $30,000 in annual income to son. Trustee's reasoning regarding future needs and remainderment is irrelevant with respect to mandatory income distribution. Therefore, son can compel trustee to distribute the full $30,000 of trust income to pay for his tuition. Question number 2. The issue is whether a beneficiary compel a trustee to invade the principle of a discretionary trust for educational expenses. Rule. A trustee of discretionary trust has sole discretion to decide whether to make principal distributions, unless there is evidence of bad faith, dishonesty, or abuse of discretion. Courts generally will not interfere with this discretion unless the trustee's actions are unreasonable or violate fiduciary duties. Here, the trust grants trustee sole and absolute discretion to invade the principal for son's education and healthcare needs. Courts are unlikely to override this discretion unless trustee's decision is unreasonable. Trustee's refusal to invade the principal to cover the tuition shortfalls appears reasonable as trustee has provided valid reason, first, preserving the trust purpose for future health needs, second, maintaining fairness to the remainderment, third, recommending alternative funding, for example, student loans. These considerations align with trustees' fiduciary duties. There is no evidence of bad faith or abuse of discretion. Therefore, son cannot compel trustee to distribute principal for his tuition expenses. Question number 3. The issue is whether a beneficiary unilaterally terminate a trust when remaindement exists and termination would interfere with the trust's material purpose. Rule: a trust cannot only be terminated if all beneficiaries consent and the termination does not interfere with the material purpose of the trust. When there are unascertained or unborn beneficiaries, termination is generally prohibited. Additionally, the presence of spendthrift or discretionary provision suggests the settler's intent to preserve the trust, making termination inappropriate. Here, son is the current beneficiary, but testator's nieces and nephews are the remainderment. Termination would require unanimous consent from all beneficiaries, including the nieces and nephews. If any remaindermen are unborn or unascertained, unanimous consent is impossible. Furthermore, the discretionary principle provision demonstrates that testators intend to provide for son's education and health care while preserving the principle for the remainderment. This constitutes a material purpose of the trust, precluding termination. Courts will not terminate a trust when doing so interferes with such purpose. Therefore, son cannot terminate the trust unilaterally, as it would interfere with a material purpose of the trust and lacks the required unanimous consent from all beneficiaries. Let's wrap up this session by revisiting the key rules. A trustee of a mandatory income trust must distribute all net income to the beneficiary as directed by the terms of the trust. The trustee has no discretion to withhold income if the trust specifies mandatory payments. A trustee of a discretionary trust has sole discretion to decide whether to make principal distributions, unless there is evidence of bad faith, dishonesty, or abuse of discretion. Courts generally will not interfere with this discretion unless the trustee's actions are unreasonable or violate fiduciary duties. A trust can only be terminated if all beneficiaries consent and the termination does not interfere with a material purpose of the trust. When there are unascertained or unborn beneficiaries, termination is generally prohibited. Additionally, the presence of spendthrift or discretionary provision suggests the settlers intend to preserve the trust, making the termination inappropriate. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. God bless you.